Imagine trying to survive a freezing winter night with no electricity, no central heating, and barely enough firewood. That was the harsh reality for medieval peasants. So how did they not freeze to death? Wool-stuffed mattresses, hay-lined floors, and sleeping next to animals? These weren't just rustic quirks. They were survival tactics used every single night. They lived in drafty huts, wore the same clothes for weeks, and yet somehow endured bitter winters. Their secret? A blend of ancient wisdom, resilience, and some very clever tricks you won't believe. A world without heat. Let's take a step back in time. The year is 1323. You're a peasant farmer in a tiny village in northern England. It's mid-January, and the air outside is a blade of ice against your skin. The sun has dipped below the horizon before dinner, and night falls like a heavy curtain. There's no thermostat to adjust, no fireplace roaring in every room, and no electric blanket to slide under. Your home is a single-room wattle and daub hut, probably shared with your family and, believe it or not, your animals. Surviving winter wasn't just about comfort. It was about staying alive. 1. Fire was sacred, but scarce. Let's start with the most obvious source of warmth: fire. Yes, medieval peasants used fire to stay warm, but not like we imagine today. A typical peasant home had just one hearth, an open fire pit right in the center of the room. It was used for cooking, heating, and sometimes even light. But here's the thing: firewood wasn't easy to come by. Most peasants didn't own the forests around them. Those were reserved for the nobility. Cutting wood without permission could lead to serious punishment, sometimes even the loss of a hand. So peasants had to be smart. They gathered fallen branches, dried animal dung, or used peat bricks, compressed plant matter dug from bogs, as fuel. And they burned it sparingly. 2. Layered seed, the medieval pile-up. Ever heard the phrase, "two in a bed keeps the devil away"? In the medieval world, it also kept frostbite away. Peasants often slept together in tight quarters, sometimes entire families in a single bed or on the floor. Privacy didn't matter, warmth did. And it wasn't just humans. In the coldest months, families often brought their livestock, goats, chickens, sometimes even pigs, into the home at night. Not just for protection from predators, but for warmth. Body heat from the animals helped keep the room a few precious degrees warmer. Children would be tucked in first, wrapped in coarse wool blankets or animal furs. Then adults would follow. The family dog, if there was one, curled at their feet. The bed might be a mattress stuffed with straw or hay. If you were lucky, you had a wooden frame to raise you off the ground. If not, you slept directly on the floor, which was also covered in rushes or straw for insulation. 3. Clothes were their blankets. When the sun went down, you didn't change into pajamas. In fact, you didn't change at all. Most peasants owned just 1 or 2 sets of clothing. These clothes were made of heavy wool, a miracle fabric for its time. Thick, durable, and great at retaining heat, even when damp. At night, you simply crawled into bed wearing everything you had on that day. Layers of tunics, undershirts, hose, and sometimes a cloak or hood. Many even slept wearing their belts and boots. Nightcaps weren't just for style, they were essential. Heat escapes from the head, so peasants wore knitted woolen caps to bed. Sometimes they pull their cloaks right over their faces to trap in every bit of warmth. 4. Blocking the wind, straw tapestries, and animal skins. Peasant homes were drafty. The walls were made of wattle, woven wooden strips covered in daub, a mixture of mud, straw, and animal dung. This gave insulation, but not much. There were no glass windows, only holes or slits in the wall, covered with cloth, wood shutters, or thin animal membranes, like stretched bladder or parchment. So how did they stop the cold wind from slicing through? With creativity. Peasants would hang old cloths, wool tapestries, if they had them, or even animal skins on the walls and over doorways to block drafts, and hung curtains around beds to trap warmth in tiny microclimates. These curtains weren't luxury, they were lifesavers. Some wealthier peasants even built box beds with sliding wooden panels to completely enclose themselves at night. 6. Warming from the inside out. You might expect medieval peasants to eat poorly, and in many ways they did. But in winter, they knew how to prepare hearty, warming meals. The evening meal, supper, was crucial for survival on cold nights. It often consisted of thick soups or pottages made from root vegetables, beans, grains, and whatever preserved meat they might have stored from the autumn slaughter. Oats, barley, leeks, garlic, onions, and dried peas were common. Meat was rare, but sometimes available in the form of salted pork or preserved offal. Spices were precious and expensive, so most flavor came from herbs like sage, thyme, or mustard seeds. 7. Earth-touch design, thermal genius in simplicity. Peasant homes may seem primitive, but they were often well designed for retaining heat, with a little help from the earth. Many cottages were semi-sunken into the ground. The floors were earthen, and this contact with the soil helped regulate temperature. While it might seem cold, earth actually helped insulate the home against freezing winds. 8. Night wasn't for staying. Unlike today, when we can be up all night binge-watching shows, medieval peasants followed the rhythm of the sun. Why? Because candles and lamp oil were expensive and scarce. Firewood was limited, and more importantly, staying awake cost energy they couldn't afford to waste. So, as soon as darkness fell, families wrapped themselves in wool, banked the fire, and went to bed. 9. Winter was also a time of rest. Here's something unexpected. The coldest part of the year was often also the most restful. Most farming tasks couldn't be done in frozen fields. There were no crops to tend, no harvesting, no planting. So, while life in medieval times was brutally hard in general, winter gave peasants something rare: a little time to recover. They mended tools, preserved food, spun wool, and repaired clothing. But they also stayed indoors more, spent time with family. 10. Communal warmth, the power of the village. In the medieval world, no one survived alone, especially not in winter. The coldest nights weren't just physically brutal, they could also be deeply isolating. But medieval peasants were part of tightly knit communities, and they knew the value of coming together. Communal gatherings were one way people warmed both their bodies and spirits. In some villages, peasants would gather in a large communal hall or around the hearth of a wealthier household, especially during the coldest stretches. They'd share stories, sing songs, mend clothing, or work wool together. 11. Managing sickness in the cold. Cold weather brings more than frost. It brings illness. In a time before antibiotics or reliable medicine, getting sick in winter could be deadly. So how did peasants deal with it? Prevention was key. Warm, hearty meals helped maintain strength. So did bundling up and limiting exposure to cold winds. But when someone did fall ill, remedies were a mix of practical and, well, questionable. Hot herbal teas made from sage, thyme, or yarrow were common treatments. Mustard poultices, garlic compresses, and honey mixed with vinegar were used to fight chest congestion. 12. Superstitions and magic in the winter darkness. Winter was a time of mystery, fear, and superstition. Long nights, howling winds, and the ever-present threat of death gave rise to deep beliefs in spirits, omens, and magic. Many peasants believed that evil spirits were more active in the cold months, especially at night. The creak of a frozen door frame or a gust through the thatch might be blamed on, or wandering souls. To ward off evil, peasants sometimes hung herbs like rosemary, rowan, or St. John's wort over doors and beds. 13. Feasting and festivals. Midwinter joy. Despite the hardships, medieval winter wasn't all misery. In fact, some of the biggest celebrations of the year happened in the coldest months. The most important of these was Christmas, or Christmastide, a 12-day celebration that started on December 25th and ended on January 6th. It was a time for rest, feasting, music, and, if they were lucky, a few sweet treats. Peasants didn't have turkeys or sugar cookies, but they celebrated with bread, cheese, ale, and preserved meats. If they had access to honey, dried fruit, or butter, those were brought out in small quantities during these special days. They decorated their homes with holly, ivy, and evergreen branches, symbols of life in the dead of winter. 14. Wool, the winter lifeline. Let's talk more about wool, the peasant's best defense against the cold. Sheep were one of the most valuable animals in medieval Europe, not just for food, but for their wool. Spun by hand and woven into thick cloth, wool was the material of choice for everything from tunics to cloaks to bedding. Wool garments were rarely washed for warmth and practicality, and over time, they grew denser with dirt and oils, making them even better at insulating. Poorer peasants might only afford coarse, scratchy wool, but even that was far better than linen or cotton for winter. Wool cloaks were often hooded and floor-length, worn day and night, sometimes wrapped twice around the body. In many cases, a cloak was the difference between shivering and surviving. 15. Sleeping twice a night, a forgotten winter rhythm. With 14 to 16 hours of darkness each night, peasants didn't sleep in one long stretch. Instead, they followed a biphasic pattern, sleeping a few hours after sundown, waking in the middle of the night, and then going back to sleep until dawn. During that midnight wakefulness, they might stoke the fire, say prayers, mend clothes, or talk quietly with family. While most agricultural tasks stopped during deep winter, peasants didn't just sit around. They repaired tools, sharpened blades, built furniture, patched roofs, mended fences, spun yarn, and processed animal hide. All of these indoor or semi-outdoor tasks kept them mildly active, which helped generate body heat without exhausting precious energy reserves. 17. Spring, a light at the end of the cold. Winter didn't last forever, but it felt like it did. By late February or early March, signs of life began to return. Snow melted, the ground softened. The return of spring meant renewal, food, light, and the chance to start again. Seeds were planted, animals gave birth, and new life flooded into the village. But winter left its mark. The old and the weak often didn't survive. Hunger lingered, and for some, frostbite, lung damage, or permanent injury followed them into spring. Still, those who survived had proven themselves once again. They had endured the dark, the hunger, the cold, and the silence. The cold never broke them. So how did medieval peasants survive the coldest nights of the year? With everything they had: fire, wool, stone, superstition, and sheer willpower. They huddled close, shared warmth, leaned on one another, and passed down wisdom forged by centuries of hardship. Their lives were hard, but their strategies were brilliant. They didn't just survive, they adapted. And they did it using the earth, their animals, their hands, and their stories. Today, it's easy to take warmth for granted. But the next time you curl up under a soft blanket or sip tea by a radiator, spare a thought for those who came before us, who faced the frost with nothing but smoke, straw, and unbreakable resilience. If you liked this informative video, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.